My name is John Theo. I've been coming to First Pres with my wife, Karen, for about 7 years now. And I wanted to just share some of my background prior to coming to First Pres. My path to salvation was kind of a slow process. I grew up in the Greek Orthodox Church, and for me it was very much cultural heritage, tradition, and somewhere mixed in there was the Christianity. I went to church, I prayed, and I even tried to read my Bible, but it didn't really make sense to me. And I remember years later I met with Pastor Derek, and he said a lot of times it's harder to preach and evangelize the cultural Christians rather than compared to non-believers, because it's such a gray area. And looking back, I understand what he meant now. And so I would go to church and I would pray, but I didn't have that personal relationship. Years later, I'd meet the woman of my dreams, and my wife, who is a strong believer, and she quickly picked up on the fact of where I was in my Christian walk, and she encouraged me rather than challenged me on my background, on my relationship. Instead of kind of pulling me from the Greek church, she was kind of pushing me towards Jesus, and the way she did it was perfect. Come to First Pres's Sunday night service, which we never came to, and in response to a prayer, we met an evangelist. His name was Paul. The church sponsors him and his family over in Greece, and he evangelizes to the Greek church over there. And he was explaining how he's not trying to change people from different denominations or pull people out of the Greek Orthodox Church. Rather, he's trying to reintroduce the gospel. And after a while, the archbishops over there caught on, and he was really embraced with his movement, what he was trying to do. So after the service, I just ran up to him and I just started hitting him with questions. I'm like, this is miraculous, the fact that he's here and he's giving this service. And what he said after was very poignant once he sat down with my wife and me. And he said that it was man who separated the church centuries ago, not God. And that we were fine and we were right to be doing this search, but the greater picture was that you have a relationship with God. So it really put my heart at ease, and I continued to kind of research and learn as much as I could. And right around the same time, we went to the Greek church one week, and an old man came up to me and pointed to my wife, who was sitting down, and said to me in a Greek accent, he goes, "Is she Greek?" And I said, "Excuse me?" He goes, "Your wife, is she Greek?" And I said, "No, she's not." And he paused for a moment, and he said, "Is she Christian?" And I said, "Yes." And then he smiled, and he said, "That's all that matters." And so between those two interactions, it really put my heart at ease. And so I started to read a lot of apologetics, and I started to really immerse myself in the Christian culture. Every once in a while, I would run up to Karen, and I'd be like, "Have you ever heard of this James Dobson? He's some new guy." And she would laugh at me. "Who's this Billy Graham?" And so as I was kind of being immersed in this culture, she was really supportive and really helpful. And eventually, one night, I was sitting reading in bed, and I realized I didn't have that personal relationship with Christ. The light bulb finally went off, and I realized I was like a rudderless ship kind of at sea, and kind of being thrown about, and I had no protection, and I had no relationship. So it was that night that I gave myself to Christ, and it was a long process, but since then. I wish I could say the moment I did that, all my problems were solved. But I realized that I've learned that perfection is not attainable this side of heaven. And I learned that Romans 8:28 stuck with me through a lot of times, that we know that in all things that God works for good for those who love Him, who are called according to His purpose. And since then, immediately after, I started reading my Bible more, and it really started to make sense to me. It was like a veil was lifted off of it. And I really started to immerse myself even more, got in a small group with the Trucials, and really started to grow in my walk. I have since then seen nothing short of mathematical miracles in my marriage, in my life, in whether it's, some month where you don't know if you're going to make your bills, and it's like the loaves and fishes. God provides. He's always provided. He's always been there for us. And it's just been probably the most radical thing I've ever done in my life. And I just wish I did it sooner. So in the end, I realized denominations don't save you. It's a personal relationship with Christ that does. So for me and my family, He is the way, the truth, and the life.